What I'm going to start with for our meditation on Christ's wholeness is one of the simple mantras that we learned in India, because it is very ancient, probably 4,000 or 5,000 years old. And I want to have some Sankirtan or chanting this afternoon to open our meditation, so that you may all become very relaxed, and then I'm going to tell you why, what we want to accomplish. Now the mantra is very simply stated. It is Om Namo Narayanaya. This is one of the more powerful mantras of India. It refers to the will of God being done, and it invites or welcomes the Divine Spirit to have His way in our personal life. And I think we ought to have no fear in saying it, because I believe that the Father is more concerned for us than we are for ourselves. I believe that most of us do not have enough perception. I say most of us do not have enough perception to really appreciate all of the things that we ought to about ourselves. We sometimes take ourselves for granted. In reality, all people are great people within, not always without. So we're going to take this Om Namo Narayanaya, and we're going to give it according to the chant. Now I'd like Mrs. Hudson to take her place at the piano so that we may strike the proper notes. Okay. Om Namo Narayanaya, 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 Om Om Namo Narayana, 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 Om Namo Narayana. Opportunity of making contact with the will of God as advocated by our beloved El Moria last evening, as advocated long ago by our beloved Jesus when he came through the atmosphere with the almost self-same fiat on his lips. Lo, I am come to do thy will, O God. If you stop and think of each life as a mission, as Mazzini said long ago, each life is a mission. You begin to realize that you yourself have something to do unique and specific in this world. This is the work of Christ. God's hands are our own. His mind is our own. What I want to do now then is have all of you listen very carefully, because this is a meditative period. And we are going to do something this afternoon to enhance each one of your personal accomplishment from the standpoint of the Spirit. We are going to try to develop a spirit of Christ wholeness this afternoon here. And we are going to be working also spiritually for the healing of the body, the healing of the mind, and the healing of the spirit of man. We want this to occur in all that are able to receive it. We believe that the same principle and power that existed a long time ago back on the hillsides of Nazareth and Judea, the Holy Land as we like to call it, exists today in our time, and that we can be recipients of the Christ healing, which is really a beautiful experience because it is necessary. We need it. We need spiritual healing. We need healing not only for our body, we need it also for our mind and for our soul. We need a complete manhood, a complete divine manhood and a divine womanhood. We do not have that on the planet today. There is a great deal of sickness, of disease, and if the disease does not exist in the physical form, we have dis-ease in the mind. We have uneasy feelings all over the planet. And people will not always tell you how they feel, but sometimes they don't feel so good. And they doubt themselves. And they doubt the power of God to keep them whole. When in reality, that is the greatest power in the universe. Can you tell me any power anywhere in the universe that is greater than the power of God? I'm afraid the American Medical Association might not like this. But I do not care, because I am not saying that there is anything wrong with the science of healing as practiced by our physicians today. It is not mine to condemn. I didn't come to condemn either. But I come to affirm the abundance of the divine grace to make you whole, every one. And after all, I think all of us appreciate that particular spirit defined by the French word élan. Now, I may not be able to say it quite correctly like a Frenchman, but it means, of course, that almost soaring and singing feeling of being right on top of the world. You know, laugh and the world laughs with you, weep and you weep alone. And we have a lot of people weeping alone in the world, and we have many times in public, we have people laughing, and they make believe, they play at being happy. But the real genuine happiness of Christ's wholeness is what we want to experience this very afternoon, not some other afternoon, not in some undefined utopian tomorrow, but right here and now, because God came through Christ 2,000 years ago, and long before that, in Melchizedek, priest of Salem. He came also, for Melchizedek did not have a father or a mother. He said he did not have beginning of days or ending of days. And Christ said, that is Christ Jesus, that he was a priest forever after the order of Melchizedek. The order is still receiving postulants. The order is still in existence. The organization exists today as it did before Abraham was, I am. And so, the beingness and being of man is still the greatest potential, and man is the greatest alchemical test tube of the whole universe, made a little lower than the angels, yet crowned with greater glory. Yes, you see, the angels can't lose it at Las Vegas. But we can. We can lose it down here in this planet, but we can also gain a great deal more than they because we have free will. The angels are ministering spirits. More or less, the angels go where the Lord sends them. Of course, we know about the Luciferian rebellion. We know that angels sometimes get those kind of ideas, but those are the fallen ones. Most of the angels are extremely obedient, believe me. But the disobedient spirit seems to permeate the earth today because we have so many people that are being reborn that have been in the prison houses beneath the earth. These are the souls that actually existed before the flood of Noah in the Atlantean deluge. And these souls were kept in those prison houses all during the time from the flood of Noah till the time of Christ. And they still were not let out. And you know, Jesus went down and preached to them during the 3 days that he was entombed. During those 3 days, Jesus Christ himself went down and preached to those spirits which were disobedient in the time of Noah, when the long-suffering of God waited, you see, before the flood. And now today, many of these motorcycle gangs in California and various other parts of the country, and many of the young people today who have embraced these Luciferian tenets are actually fallen beings who for the first time now in thousands of years are now amongst men and are raising upon the earth once again, as they did long ago, the spirit of disobedience. But I think that God is going to win the victory, and that these young people are going to be probably the greatest, because having suffered as they did in the flood of Noah, and being reborn now and let out with all these latent tendencies in their consciousness, if the subduing of those tendencies can come about, and they can be put on the correct spiritual path, why, they don't want to go back then, you see. They won't want to go back into that at all. They really will know. Now, I don't believe in doing evil that good may come. I don't recommend that people should do evil that good may come, but you know what it says. Whoever is forgiven much loveth much, Jesus said. And if a person has actually committed a great deal of wrong in their life or in past lives, and they come to the place where they understand the true nature of forgiveness, and they receive forgiveness and the opportunity to balance the wrong they've done to life, their debts to life, I believe those people will love a great deal. You know, Mary Magdalene was one of these, and she, of course, got down on her knees to Christ. She broke the precious alabaster box of ointment, and she anointed his feet, and she washed his feet with her hair. That is symbolical and real at the same time. It actually happened, but it gives us, or it illustrates for us, the great devotion people feel when they're forgiven. We'll cover more of that in our other lecture. Now, getting on with the Christ wholeness, I want to see genuine experiences this afternoon. I believe that some of you people here this afternoon are going to have these experiences during our meditation. And I believe it because of the law. I don't believe it because it's a whimsy with me. It's not a whimsy. I feel definitely that it happens and can happen right here this afternoon. It doesn't have to be noised abroad. It can be kept within the temple of your own life, or you can tell us about it if you wish. It makes no difference. Give God the glory for whatever happens. And so we gave this chant together. Now I want you to think of the Christ nature. Before Abraham was, I am. Nuk pa nuk. The ancient words of the Egyptian, in the Egyptian tongue. Nuk pa nuk. I am that I am. Om tat sat. When you understand that you are that I am, that you are not the individual that you seem to be, something may take place in you that you never dreamed of. I want to see this afternoon if you are going to be willing to relinquish the domination of yourself by your outer self. I want to see if you're willing to let go of name and fame and personal person. And if you're willing to consider the meaning of the Om Tat Sat. I am that I am. After all, what is it that separates you from your immortality? To make your eyes like laser beams, to bore holes right through the walls, to walk on the water, to see a leper and touch him and the leprosy is gone, to get rid of any condition unwanted in your body or mind, to do anything that you want to do, to walk through walls, to be a master of your own destiny. What is it that separates you right this afternoon from that power? Just a little time. Oh yes. The year 2000, we'll say. Here you are in time, a prisoner in time, locked in time. But way back, there was a place when you said it, I am that I am. You recognized the meaning of being. You didn't mind being a dewdrop floating into the shining sea. You weren't afraid of being dissolved like a salt doll then. Now people are afraid. They say, preserve me an individuality. I want to be separate. I want my own desires. I want to do what I want to do. I don't want God to interfere. I have free will. Yes, very true. We all have free will. And this is exactly the most important point. It is when free will begins to choose to do God's will that free will is really free. Why, the freedom you had before, which was simply a freedom of choice, what is this freedom of choice? Unless you objectify it correctly by choosing the will of God. You're going into a dime store or a circus or carnival with $1 million. You have $1 million now in your pocket. And you can buy anything you want. Buy all the baubles and trinkets of life for a whole $1 million worth. Just think of it. And that is what so many people do. They're going to this carnival, this bazaar, and they buy anything they want to buy, you see. It's a matter of possession. Jesus Christ said a man's life does not consist of the abundance of the things that he possesseth. I was thinking one day about a scrap of paper, a check payable to me for $1 million. And I said to myself, this would make all this difference. If I had that scrap of paper in my hands, $1 million signed by someone who was good for it, payable to me, then I'd be worth $1 million. I said that to myself. And I realized right then and there that vested in that small scrap of paper and the faith that people have in the banks and in the individual, a person can transfer $1 million that easy from one person to another, just in one little hunk of paper. And that's all it really is worth, because we can buy with it the baubles and trinkets of life, the yachts and the playthings like Mr. Onassis and some of our other people in the elite and super rich do. But what does this do for us as individuals to have this power, economically speaking, wisely used we can imagine all the good that could be done with it for others. But incorrectly used and selfishly used, it's very meaningless. And even so, even if we spend it all in charity and give it to the poor, if we gave it to the poor, you see, nothing would really have happened except we probably would have done something from a karmic standpoint that would be good. But we still would need to have the spiritual gold, and we'd still need the spiritual goals as well as the gold. We'd still need something for our souls, and that's the abundant life. That is the wholeness, Christ's wholeness, that said before Abraham was, I am, Om Tat Sat, I am that I am. Now, you have to realize, first of all, that you can become it. You can become that I am. But you cannot be, it says, no man can serve two masters. He will either love one and hate the other, you see. It's what the Bible says. Now, as long as we are concerned with serving two masters, we want all of the spirituality that God has, and we still want to have possession of all the things of the world. We kind of divide ourselves, don't we? We have a river, and the river's flowing this way at the fork, and then another part of us is flowing that way. So we do not really put the full amount of our energies where it should be. That's why Jesus said, seek ye first the kingdom of heaven and its righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. Now, we don't want personal righteousness. We want the righteousness in God that comes from grace. Only through grace can we really thrive. You know that? It's through grace. It's not through just good works alone. So many people think, well, I'm a good person. I go to church on a certain day. I pay my tithes. I'm good to my neighbors. I do this and I do that. This is fine. I'm not advocating that people should be bad to their neighbors, that they should not go to church, that they should not do these things. But I'm trying to tell you that the righteousness that is from God is greater as grace than the righteousness that you make by saying, I am a good person, without understanding that the I am is already good. In other words, you've already got everything you need right now. What do people have to say? It's a matter of a lot of the yogis in India and the preachers today, the yogis and the preachers and all the different people, they try to convey an idea that you have to do something as a person to claim your birthright. They will not tell you that you have a certain spot of ground you're standing on. That is your birthright. You can claim that. That's yourself. That's you, your identity. You can mine that. And when you do, something very, very marvelous is going to happen to you. But they'll always convey, these false teachers and false prophets, and there are many of them, they'll always convey to you that Christ is here and Christ is there. And he says, go not, for the kingdom of God is within you. That is the message of the great white brotherhood. And that is the message I am bringing to you this afternoon on our meditation. We're going to have it very shortly, but I want to be sure that the setting of the stage is correct. I want to be sure that you understand what you are seeking. If you do not understand what you're seeking, if you think you're going to have an experience but don't understand that experience, then you see nothing can happen to you, because as soon as it's all over with, you'll have a good feeling, yes. But the feeling is gone, and you don't know why you felt good. You don't know what has happened. All you know is something happened. Well, that's the way with a lot of these meditations that are conducted in the Orient, sometimes even by unscrupulous people. Not all of them are unscrupulous. Some of them are very fine. But the point is, and the same is true, by the way, in regard to many religious people. They'll have very beautiful church services. And then again, sometimes it's completely and purely hypocritical or just a matter of form. We're not concerned with that. We are concerned with the burning bush this afternoon. We're concerned with the burning bush on the Sinai desert. I am that I am. Om Tat Sat. That is what we are concerned with. That you as an individual begin to realize that there was a time back at the beginning on the shelf or rim of eternity when you were first created and you were not separated then at all from God by your own thoughts. Why, you could imagine and envision it as easy as pie, that you were a part of God. This didn't seem strange to you then at all. Limitation, why, limitation you'd never heard of. It reminds me of the salesman who went to the town. And he got in this town, and he went all around, and first thing you know, he had a tremendous number of orders. And his little order pad was just bulging. So the home office called him up, and they said, "You're certainly doing very well in this territory." He said, "Yes, I am." So the next day, he got more orders, and pretty soon he was the best salesman in the United States. He had all these orders, you see. And so they asked him how he did it. Well, he said, "I don't know." He said, "I just went out and worked." And they said, "Well, didn't you know that that territory right over there was the worst territory in the whole United States? Nobody ever makes anything in that territory, and you did it. How did you do it?" He said, "I just did it. Nobody told me," he said, "that it was the worst territory." So you see, there's a great deal in what we think, in our own sense of limitation. If we think limitation, we reap limitation. If we think abundance, we reap abundance. The whole idea is you have to remember that the pump sometimes needs priming. And you live in a sidereal universe. You live in the elements of time and space. Kal and Desh in the Sanskrit. And when you live in that, you have to understand that you have to be free from that. And that's what we aim to do today, is to develop in you a freedom from your old roots. We want you to pull your roots up today. Oh, you can put them down tomorrow in the same old places if you want to. It's up to you. But we want you to pull the roots up and forget who you are. That's right. Forget your limitations. If you wear glasses, forget it. You see perfectly. If you have a hearing aid on, forget it. You hear perfectly. Whatever your limitations. So you're a little dizzy. Well, you're going to decide that you're going to be just as stable as a gyroscope. So the whole idea is, whatever your limitations, forget them. They are no part of God. I challenge you today, any one of you, to tell me that your limitations, or any of our limitations, or all of them put together into a paper bag, belong to God. They don't. Can you imagine God, the Spirit, that can create all of the things we see in our physical body and the stars and the universe? Can you imagine God with limitations? Can you imagine God the way some people have pictured him? God is dead. They got him laid out. God's walking along with a cane. God is got crutches. Well, God doesn't have any of these things, and you are that Om Tat Sat. You are I am that I am. So if you're ever to find this promised land, you better realize it, because this promised land is available to you. It's in the showcase. It will cost you everything you've got, and it's worth more than you've got. How do you like that? But it's true. So now we're going to come to our meditation on Christ's holiness. What kind of a man was Jesus? He said, "Before Abraham was, I am." We know that he had past embodiments. We are not concerned with them. We know you have had past embodiments. We're not concerned with those embodiments. What we are concerned with is now, today. What are you? Well, you are what you can realize in consciousness. And so, we're going to invoke today the memory of the body cells just as they came forth from God in your first embodiment. Did you ever stop to realize anything about the RNA and the DNA chain? How many people here know anything? Let me see your hands. How many people here know anything about the DNA chain? Well, there's not too many. I'm rather surprised. It is the memory, then, of nature within the cells in a chain. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes. In other words, we find now that all of us contain an alphabet. It's an alphabet, a hieroglyph, a language inside of our cells, the cells of our body, and I'm not so sure that we don't have it in our mind as well. And that this alphabet, from our own personal computer, the computer within ourselves. You didn't know you had a built-in computer, did you? You thought it was only one of those whirly-gig affairs that cost $50,000. Well, you have something better inside of yourself. They may tell you you're worth 98 cents or 99 cents, but you've got something more wonderful in your body and in your mind and your being than that. So, you've got this computer, you've got this DNA chain, this divine memory implanted within you. Now they've come out with ribonucleic acid, RNA, which activates this memory in the cells, and the health food stores sell it. Did you know that? Well, you can get that from your health food stores, and it will jog the memory. Now, I think several years ago that Mr. Lahovsky, who I believe in some way was connected with Nikola Tesla, who had his laboratory here in Colorado Springs, experimented with the multi-wave oscillator, which was an electronic device utilizing the Tesla coil that actually began to jog the memory in the cells of the body. Now, I want to postulate to you that whereas this may work momentarily and so forth, what we are concerned with is the permanent jogging of the cells by Christ's wholeness coming through the living God, through His only begotten Son, through the living Christ consciousness. And do you know who the only begotten Son is? He's the one that said before Abraham was, I am. He spoke in Jesus. He said before Abraham was, I am. That was Venus, the royal priesthood of Melchizedek, which goes back into a very ancient time that I don't want to get into right now, but I just want to give you the idea. So what we want to happen is we want God to permanently jog ourselves and do it every day until Christ's wholeness becomes a reality, a cosmic reality for ourselves. And if you don't manifest it entirely physically, some of you people that are over 50, 60, 70, or whatever you are, it doesn't make any difference because it must be in consciousness, in your consciousness. And if it's in your consciousness, something wonderful is going to happen. Now, there's a lady sitting in here. I don't think she'll mind if I won't use her name. There's a lady in here, I imagine she's somewhere around 70, I don't know. And she was in the hospital with a stroke. A blood clot on the brain, I believe. And she kept using a mantram of her own, or one she knew at least. And the mantra went something like this: light expand, light expand, light expand, expand, expand. And after a certain number of hours of using that mantra, suddenly her hand, which had been paralyzed, something happened in the brain with electronic energy. And that hand just came up. And first thing you know, she was free of any paralysis and she was healed. And she has been now many years attending our services quite faithfully. I mention this in passing because it demonstrates that there is a practical connection between the spiritual electronic essence of Christ's wholeness and our invocation of that wholeness for ourselves and for others. We have something to do with this alchemical experiment. What did Jesus say? What did He say? Daughter, thy faith hath made thee whole. Whose faith? My faith? No, He said, thy faith hath made thee whole. So let us understand today that we need faith in this invocation of Christ's wholeness. We must believe that God is and that He is the rewarder of them that diligently seek Him. If we don't believe that God is, if we have doubts about God, forget it. Why, our very doubts destroy the matrix before we can even start. As one man once said, if there were no God, it would be necessary for us to invent one. We realize and understand anthropomorphism. We understand the God that we have made in our image and after our likeness. We understand that everyone has these gods. And what has God said about it? Thou shalt have no other gods before me. Yet we find millions of people and a million gods. Why? Because they have a concept of God, and that concept of God is probably wrong. It's probably self-limiting, and even God-limiting, if God allowed it. So you see, it is important that we understand the living God. When Elijah the prophet stood in the great test before the ancient prophets of Baal, and they called for hours and hours, "O Baal, hear us," they kept saying. And nothing happened. Then Elijah prepared everything, and he stood back from the altar. And he said, "O living God, hear us." And the fire came down from heaven, and the fire licked up even the water around the altar. They knew that something had really happened. There is a living God. And it is in His image that we were made. And because it is in His image that we were made, it is in His image that we must be made again. We must return to that image. How we do it? Through the Christ consciousness, through the Christ wholeness, is a matter for us to try to understand, but be satisfied to let it work whether or not we understand it. So this afternoon, I will ask our pianists and our organist to please take their position for our meditation. Please sit erect in your chairs and separate your hands and feet. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Open the mighty continents of the air unto the Spirit of perfection in thyself. Through the hands of the living Christ, walk freely amongst us and radiate thy Spirit of perfection through us. Penetrate the walls of the mind, those self-erected barriers of destructivity, even of concupiscence, of error, and of shadow. And with thy Spirit, burn aside these barriers with a wisp of living flame, vital and complete. O Majesty, descend in the name of the Spirit of the great white brotherhood, world without end. Direct a stream of vital light energy, the energy of perfection now, into brain, being, body, mind, soul, all, free spirits, and uproot them from the earth to which they have become wedded by habit and banal desires. Drench them now with sacred fires, essence glow, perfection's flow, divine enhancement, marvelous to behold, O thou who gildest the lilies with spiritual gold, golden glow of cosmic light energy, enfolding each consciousness, budding in its spirit of essential divinity, enfolding all and making aware of infinity, perfection. I love, I live, I am. Lo, because thou art, I am. Let the struggle cease. the struggle for self-mastery in the invincible cosmic victory of overcoming all those barriers self-erected by the energy of God, perfected of yore, long ago, and transcending all, transmuting all by its fiery glow. O burning bush, O sacred fire, out from the depths of cosmic desire, from the will of God, long ago, leading through the Sinai desert to the promised land. Let men understand that I am is God within, the presence of perfection, making each body cell to dance and vibrate, freeing itself from all that binds and blinds and limits and causes confusion. Kiss us with thy gentle kiss of peace, a sweet knowing within that now mounts as upon cloud-capped curtain to those mighty areas that will rend the veil in twain, a place where man is no longer separated from God, from the true reality of his being, but now by the perfection of the eye all-seeing can begin once again to crystallize, to magnetize, to vitalize the vibrant image which I am, which all are, for none are turned away. Thou hast said, Ho, all that are athirst, drink ye freely of the water of life. And now, as we consider in our minds the divine tale, let us understand the cosmic flow of spiritual light energy as it goes amongst us, here and there and everywhere, radiating the perfection of higher spheres here below, that all may understand and know that I am, that the perfection which I am is the perfection that made the universe, created all those cosmic globules of light energy suspended in space as on cords of glowing fire, and radiating now those droplets of cosmic dew, which will free the one, the many, and the few from all conditions and bring into view that splendor, that wonder, that completion which I am. For I am is the light, is the intimate spirit that guides the flight of the sparrow in his course, until all understand their own divine reality and know the reality of God, because they have become that. O eternal presence of the Christ upon the hillsides, upon the mountaintop, open the great folds of thy robe, and let the enfoldment of cosmic light energy penetrate all the density of those individuals who have come here for the resurrection spirit and the flame of thy truth. Give them the cosmic proof of thy reality. Open thou the gates of eternity, and let us hear the music of the spheres. Lo, I am with you always, thou hast said, and the light flowing round thy head is with us still. Thy gaze, thy holy eye, upon our every cry, does remind us thou art God incarnate. And with all this light, we understand that we are too. We consider ourselves as lesser brothers, we the few and the many. We consider ourselves manifest tokens of thy love. O eternal Christ, place thy hand upon our brow. Let us feel thee now, a burning desire for Christ's wholeness, a fire of cosmic splendor reaching into the spirit of every man upon this planet and banding together the children of the world in one understanding made manifest, that thy banner unfurled is cosmic unity, not a mere uniting without perfecting, but a uniting for perfection. Lo, I am with you always, even unto the end of the world. We will have now a silent meditation continuing the theme. Please continue your meditation, and we will all work spiritually. white fire, cosmic lilies of the Spirit. Oh, open thy petals, release thy fragrance from the heart of the sun. I am the one, e pluribus unum, one out of many, many out of one. O living Christ, release thy fragrance now. Make us whole. Make us whole. Make us whole. Peace be with you. This ends our meditation.